Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in this great country, the good old US of A. Really excited to be with you guys today and go live here inside of our group. And of course, we'll be sharing with other people across different platforms. But here we are, another day for you to build a life that you want, supported by the business that you've created. As you can see, we got this really cool background set up. That's right. Took a minute to get it all up and running, but we got it set up. And I'm really excited about that. But really what I'm more excited about is talking to you guys today. I will tell you that the topic of conversation that I have more with any contractor throughout the year has to do with the struggles inside of their business. Now, there are some struggles that are uniform across the board, and then there's some struggles that are unique to a particular individual or a business. But regardless, the point is that you're going to struggle inside of your business. And I just want to make that abundantly clear. I'm not going to teach you how not to struggle. Hell, that's what this whole life is about, right? Figuring out how to make it happen regardless of when things go sideways, whether that's your relationship with your spouse, whether that's your physical health, whether that's your business. And today, really, I want to touch on one particular subject, and it's the idea of understanding the struggles that you're going to face and really ultimately what it is that needs to happen with it. Fair? So if you're watching live, go ahead and push the smash the heart, comment live. If you're watching the replay, comment replay. I love to see you guys inside of here and interact with me. By the way, if you have any questions throughout this, please drop the question down below. I will answer it. If you are watching this on replay, don't worry. I come back and check the messages, so I'll answer your question as well. Now, let me start it off by telling you a story. Last week, I met with a gentleman who has a tree trimming service in South Carolina. And as part of his business, you guessed it, he trims trees, but he also cleans yards and does some other stuff. Not regular landscaping, but a little unique. And he called me very worried. And he was talking about the fact that he didn't know what he was going to do. He had some jobs and they had either been pushed off or they'd run out. And here he was in the quote unquote winter season and not a lot of work to do. And I sat there and listened to him for a minute and asked a few questions. But at the end, what I told him was the same thing that I'm going to tell you today, right? Is that you're going to struggle inside of your business, whether it's, cash flow problems, whether it's with employees, whether it's this or that, you're going to struggle. And so the important thing is to understand, number one, is that you're not alone. You're not the only one that's dealing with this. But number two, and more important than anything, is that there is a solution for your problem. Because, you guessed it, you're not the first one that has had to deal with these problems, which means there is a way out. And I want to share with you, again, the top 5 struggles that will bury any contracting business, but more importantly, what it is that you can do about it. So first and foremost, the biggest struggle that every contractor will face at some point, if you're not facing it right now, don't worry, you will. It's part of growth, but it's also part of the struggle of the business in between, is this thing we call cash flow, right? Now, what is cash flow? Cash flow is the money that you need to run your business. Now, this could be for equipment, it could be for employees, it could be for, the rent on your office space or your building, but ultimately it's the money that you need to run your business. Now, if you run a contracting business, guess what? Sometimes the money comes in on a regular basis and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the jobs come in on a regular basis and sometimes they don't, right? Some of you are very focused on dealing with consumers, right? Your B2C, we call it, business to consumer. You sell a product or a service to a homeowner, to an individual. You might be an electrician, you might be a plumber, you might be a handyman, any of those type of things. They're all B2C. And that's good because normally what happens is once you finish the job, you get paid, right? Which is super nice. But what happens when the jobs aren't regular? Then you're not getting paid, right? And you still have the overhead, you still have to run the business, but you don't have the consistent cash flow. For those of you that deal with, investors, that deal with commercial businesses, that deal with industrial businesses, any of these large scale operations, the cash flow cycle, as we call it, or the money coming in, doesn't come in on a regular basis. your what's called net 30, net 60, net 90. All that means is by the time you turn in that invoice of, hey, Mr. Jones, Mr. Construction Company, I finished the work, it's going to take you 30, 60, 90 days before you get paid. Well, guess what? You've already paid for your materials. You've already paid for your subs or your employees. You need to get paid. You have equipment, bills, and whatnot, but there's no money coming in or out, right? Hence, cash flow problems. So the first thing that we need to do when it comes to dealing with cash flow is what I call the B word. And it's not the B word that you're probably thinking about, but you're probably thinking about it and then saying the B word, right? It's a thing called a budget. And I laugh because I hate budgeting. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not a budgeter. My wife gets on me all the time. Hey, why did you spend $372 at Costco this week? I'm like, because there was stuff. I mean, I don't know. So I struggle with budgeting too. But what I've understood inside of business is if you have no budget, you have no idea what's coming up. And what ends up happening is things punch you in the face, right? So a budget helps you a couple of different ways. One, it helps you understanding your cash flow, what's coming in and what's coming out every month. But two, it allows you to bid your jobs to make sure that you're making money and make sure that you're on top of the people that owe you money. Why? Because you need to get paid. So the first thing is create a budget. The second thing, and this may seem obvious, but there's a lot of contractors that struggle with this thing, right? The second thing is invoice. Let me write this properly here. Whoops. Where's my eraser? There we go. Is invoice on time. I will tell you, whether you work with a homeowner or you work with a big construction company or somewhere in between, nobody wants to let go of their money, right? And so if you're not invoicing them, they're not going to call you up and go, hey, John, I know you did that work 2 weeks and we haven't gotten an invoice yet. Can you go ahead and send that over so we can pay you? No, they're going to wait until you reach out to them. So it's very important that you invoice on time. Again, if you're dealing with consumers, invoice right away. And you need the capability to accept payment right there. I don't have a checkbook. Awesome. We accept credit cards, right? Get a way to get paid more quickly, okay? The third piece of this, and it's the one that a lot of you are dealing with right now, is what we call seasonal fluctuations. Yes, it sounds like a science term. I get it, but it's not, okay? What are seasonal fluctuations? Seasonal fluctuations are what happens when the temperature changes, right? Now, if you're north of the middle of the US, odds are you've experienced a huge temperature shift, right? Pretty warm in the summer, pretty cold in the winter. And by default, people don't do things. By default, if the ground is hard, you can't dig, or you can't paint, or you can't, whatever it is. There is going to be seasonal fluctuations. The time between Thanksgiving and Christmas is the dead zone. If you got business on the books, you're going to keep working. But the odds of you finding new work in that time, not very good. So what do you need to do? You need to plan ahead and know that, hey, again, going back to the budget, it's going to take me, $22,500 a month to keep this thing afloat. I got to make sure that I make enough money in the summer months to carry me through the winter months, right? Okay, so cash flow is number one. The second thing that could create massive issues and bury you inside of your business has to do with subs or employees, right? Now, what's the issue with subs or employees? Well, there's a couple different things there. The first thing, and this is where most contractors struggle, you didn't go to school and get a business degree. Let's just call it what it is, right? You went to the school of hard knocks. You got out your hammer, you started hammering, or you started screwing, or you started wiring, or you started digging, whatever it was inside of your business, you started doing that and you became pretty good at it. But you never really learned how to run a business. And one of the aspects of running a business is learning to manage people. And this is where most contractors get stuck. They get stuck because they don't know how to manage people. And if you can't figure out how to manage people, there is a high likelihood that you will fail as a contractor. Let that sit for a second, right? How is it then that we learn to deal with subs and employees, with people? Okay, the first thing is what we call a vetting process. What is a vetting process? Think of it as a filtering process. Just like your water cooler has that filter inside of it, it's the same thing when it comes to people. You have to have a way to filter your people. Now, when I was working as a police officer, as a member of, well, prior to being a member of the SWAT team, we had to go through a vetting process, and it was multi-stage. One of it had to do with them sending paperwork forms to people that we worked with and asking them to critique us. Hey, tell us about John. Is John a good person? Is he on time? Does he deal with other people? What does he do when he's stressed out? All these different things. They were gathering information. They were vetting. Same thing when it came to the actual skills of doing the work. We had to do a physical agility test, which I'll get into later, but it was a whole lot of fun and not so much fun. We had to do dummy drag with a 150-pound dummy, carrying a weighted vest and all these different obstacles. Good times. And the other piece was shooting skills, right? Can you hit a target? Can you hit multiple targets? Can you move and shoot? Can you make decisions on, okay, is this a target that I should be shooting or not be shooting? All these different things became the vetting process. And as part of that vetting process, the cream rises to the top. In other words, the good people will always make their way to the top, which makes your job, extending an offer or working with somebody, a whole lot easier. So you need a thorough vetting process. The second thing is what we call clear expectations. You've heard the saying, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And it's so true. How many times have you been on a job site and assumed an employee knew how to do something? Or you're a general contractor or you have people working for you and you assume that the person knows how to lay tile, run an electrical line, so on and so forth. And how often does it not happen that way? It's not because of anything that you did or didn't do. It's because the person doesn't understand how it is that you want it done or isn't capable of it, right? And this is where you have to learn how to create clear expectations. Now, if it's an employee, guess what? When it's an employee, you learn like, hey, watch me do it with me, now you do it, right? You have a very clear training process that vets them again further or filters them. Hey, this person knows how to do what I need them to do or they don't. When it comes to subs, how do we handle that? Contracts. You need a subcontractor agreement and it needs to be super clear, right? There's different addendums or pieces of a subcontract agreement that you need to put in place. A really good one is paid when paid, right? Or pay when paid. Or pay when paid, excuse me. What does that mean? That means your contractors need to be abundantly clear that they will get paid once you get paid. Now, it's statute in certain states that a contractor has 30 days to pay his subs, before the subs can file suit. But it's not abundantly clear with people, right? So you need to make that clear from the beginning. Hey, listen, John, I'm gonna hire you to do this electrical work. This is how much we agreed to, but just so we're clear, I'm not paying you until I get paid. Is that clear? Yeah, totally clear. Awesome. Some of you want to pay ahead? Fine, do that. Whatever it is, your contract needs to be clear. What do I expect you to do? How do I expect you to do it? When and how are you going to get paid? All right? The third piece is you need to have backup. I'll tell you the best thing of being a police officer is when I got stuck or in a situation where things were not turning my way, I could call for backup. I could call for more people to come help me find a solution to the problem, right? Same thing as a contractor. You need to have backup, whether it's subs or employees. You need not just one electrician that you work with, you need 3 to 5, right? You don't need just the 2 employees or 4 employees that you have working with you. You need to constantly be hiring and have a pool of potential people so that if this one doesn't work out, you're not starting from zero again. Make sense? All right. Number 3. We call this the standard. Okay? What is the standard for the work that you do? In other words, what are the industry regulations? How do we make sure that if something changed when it comes to wiring, the electrical line inside of a house, or the plumbing, or how many valves could be, inside of a yard, or whatever it is, how is it that we make sure that we are keeping that standard? I'll give you a perfect example. My sister lives in New Mexico. She's building a house. Beautiful house with a casita attached to it, great view of the mountains. She's about ready to pull all of her hair out because there's an issue. The gentleman who came to do the stucco for the house wired it and prepped it a certain way. Well, guess what? In one city, that's okay, and they've gotten permission to do that. But in this particular city, you can't do that. And so now they're stuck dealing with a potential $25,000 problem because their sub doesn't want to change it and the inspector doesn't want to approve it. Problem, right? So you need to know and be very clear on the standards. So you need to stay updated. Okay? You don't want to get to a point where you roof a house and then the inspector comes back and says, tear it all down, you did it wrong. Or you pour the foundation walls for a basement. Nope, that's not done to code, right? That's going to cost you. It's going to cost you time. Sure as hell is going to cost you money, okay? The same thing, and I know this sounds strange as a contractor, but you need legal help. You need somebody in your back pocket who's going to help you out. When we created our agreement and our subcontractor agreement, our contract with the people that we work with, and our subcontractor agreement, guess who we used? Not the internet, a lawyer. And it wasn't super expensive. It was like $300. But I know that agreement contains all the information that it needs to protect me, right? I know that agreement is set up in a way that it is up to industry standards. Every year, guess what? I'm going to go back and refresh it as needed. So you need to maintain the standard, okay? Number 4, this is the hardest one that contractors will ever have to deal with. And it's this idea of quality versus cost. Oh yeah, here we go, right? Which piece of 2x4 should you use? What type of concrete should you use? What type of electrical wire should you use? What type of roofing material should you use, right? Quality, cost, quality, cost, quality, cost. Now, I will tell you from experience that there are 2 types of people. There's a people that value cost and cost efficiency, and there's a people that value quality. You have to know who it is that you are working with, because the last thing that you want to do is put a more expensive material or a thing on a property, only have it come back and bite you in the ass. Perfect example. There's a contractor that I work with. They had a plumber. The plumber did a consultation outside of their scope of work with the homeowner and said, hey, this really cool tub, clawfoot, blah, 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 whatever. And the homeowner said, yes, I want that. Well, guess what? That tub was $6,000. Now the contractor has to explain to the homeowner that they've gone over budget, right? Problem. So what's more important to your client? Is it quality or is it cost? Figure it out, and then you can determine how it is that you're going to approach that, okay? So that helps, number 1, with communication. Number 2, with project management, which is super important, right? And then number 3, oops, I put a 2 in there and it should have been a B. Why don't you tell me? Let me fix that thing up there. A B, okay? And the third thing when it comes to this is understanding your costs, right? Because again, if you bid based off of low quality and the client wants high quality, what happened to your margin? Shrunk, right? We don't want that to happen. So you need to understand your costs when it comes to your jobs. And then 5th, and of course, definitely the most fun, is you're managing your client, if I can spell this right, Client expectations. Now, clients are just like people, man. There is no one type of client. There's the good clients, there's the bad clients, there's the in-between clients, there's the clients who are going to nitpick you, there's the clients who want to do half the work with you, there's the clients who don't ever want to see you. Like, there's all kinds of clients. And so you need to get clear on managing those clients. Going back to what we talked about before, this is where communication is so important, right? Now, if you have a delay, you can sure try and hide it. But what I've found is the easiest thing to do when you have a delay is communicate the delay. Might they be a little annoyed? Might they be angry? Sure. But what happened is you're super clear. And so inside of that, there's no unrealistic expectation anymore, right? So they might think you're going to finish on Friday, but you have a delay. The shower door is not going to be here till Tuesday. You didn't tell them. Friday rolls around. They're like, hey, where are you? You don't answer your phone, or you send them to voicemail, or you shoot them a text, whatever it is, versus when you identify the problem, deal with it, right? Right away. Communicate. Make sure that that's clear. The second thing is you have to set realistic expectations. Meaning, you're not going to build a house overnight. You're not going to paint a house in 2 hours, right? It's going to take time. But leveraging communication, you have to get really good at managing your client expectations. If it's not going to happen, they need to know it's not going to happen. Or they need to know, hey, it's going to happen within this time frame, right? You have to build those into your project timeline. The third thing is what we call follow-up, right? Now, what we do is after every week, we go through and we film the job site. Most homeowners, they either aren't there or they're not there when you're there. And so we go through and we film the job site. Why do we do that? Because I can then send that to the client. They know exactly where things are at, and I can talk to them about what they should expect coming up next. If there's any issues, I know I'm going to hear from them. If I don't hear from them, I know there's no issues, right? So we make sure that there's a feedback loop. There's an opportunity for us to follow up and see, hey, look, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. And do you have any issues, questions, problems on what's going on, right? Okay, so look at what we just did here. A lot of stuff we just talked about. But I want you to ask yourself, which area inside of here is the one that you're struggling with the most right now? Is it cash flow? Is it your subs or employees? Is it the standard that you work with? Is it quality or cost? Or is it managing client expectations? Or is it a combination of those? Whatever it is, you can sit here and keep dealing with it, absolutely. But what will happen is eventually it will bury you and your business. So don't wait. Find a solution to the problem. All right, you know what time it is. Time for you guys to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.